Do you want me to start off by saying, hi, this is Robin?
I think you should.
Okay. Hey, guys, this is Robin.
And this is Kelsey. And you're listening to Mudstuds and Skullcaps.
Yep, that's what I meant to say.
So for today's episode, we are going to talk about some of the tips and tricks that we have learned throughout the years to help us bring our horses training along and help us stay competitive. So, how are you doing, Robin? How's your...
I'm doing all right. And my ponies are doing good. They're so annoyed by all the flies. I can't figure out. So you sent me a link a while ago to some Valley Vet thing that was like a fly trap, but it killed flies for like an acre or so. And I haven't gotten it yet, but I've thought about getting it to see how effective it is. But I'm just afraid that I'd waste my money and it's not effective at all.
So that's not for flies. That was the mosquito thing.
Okay.
It has like a cool name. It's something super tough sounding. I think it seemed to work really well last year. We bought a bunch this year and it's not as effective, but because we're so close to the stream and we have wetlands, we have a ton of mosquitoes. So any help with mosquitoes is appreciated.
Well, I can't figure out, how do you get rid of gnats?
Like, right, that was like my next question. My next thing was I've got the flies from Spalding, so I've got my fly predators, I've got my mosquito traps, and basically all that is left is gnats. So the only thing I have found that works for gnats is like Vaseline on their stomachs. That's the only thing.
Yeah, I'm going to have to do that because I had SWAT and stuff on her stomach. It hasn't been working on them. And then the freaking gnats, like they just make clouds around your head and I get so annoyed and they fly into your eye and your mouth. And it's just a horrible experience for everybody involved.
Okay, so your gnats are much tougher than our gnats.
They are. Thank you for appreciating the gnats.
Yes.
Go gnats.
You've got tough gnats.
Thanks, man.
You've got big gnats too.
That's what I like to hear. Us North Carolinians, we got the big gnats. It's the East Coast spirit, man.
That's good for you. So I did, like, for my birthday present from my dad was a bottle of fly spray. And it's neem fly spray. No, it's like the good stuff that actually really works and lasts a long time. And it's organic. And so I sprayed that last night and it really helped. It's always fun, like when you spray fly spray and then you're like watching the fly trying to like find a clear spot to land or the mosquito. Yes. That's my favorite. It's just like watching them get
I always
stuck.
feel like I put on, an invisible shield. As soon as I spray my fly spray on, I'm like, okay, I'm ready. Come fly at me. I got you.
Yeah, I really wanted to get, they have like automatic fly spray dispensers. I really want one, or a couple, but the only ones on the market right now are like really chemical. They're chemicals which are, have the perethrins in them that is harmful to like fish and bees and things.
Yeah.
And so, and you can only, the ones that are smaller, like you can get really expensive big systems that you can custom make your liquid. But I really want a, small system for like 2 stalls that has an organic like fly spray in it, but also one that you can have oils. I'm trying like so that it conditions the horse's coat at the same time that it's like spraying fly spray that's not toxic.
That's clever.
Yeah, so I'm really hoping either Ben can figure out how to like rig something for me because I like the dispenser. It's just like the spray dispensers you put in like public bathrooms that spray the scent out, it's just like,
yeah, no, I know what you're talking about.
But yeah, there's only one can that fits in there. So I was gonna see if my boyfriend could like figure out a way to either find a different can that could fit in there or we could make our own because I really like the concept. Yeah. I just don't want to use their chemical.
No, I get that. And like a lot of fly sprays are super chemically. And I found that most of the fly sprays that you get from Tractor Supply or just the basic feed store that are available, they're so ineffective. They last for maybe 10, 15 minutes. And then they're just so ineffective. And then I've tried various other ones that are oil-based. Mm-hmm. But the issue with the oil-based ones is it gets all gunky on their coat. It's like, it creates like that black kind of gunk. And it like gunks up in between their chest and their legs and everything and like their girth area. And that obviously isn't comfortable for them because rather than staying on their coat, it just like traps dirt and flies.
Yeah, that's why like one of the best ways to manage flies is just like trying to manage the fly mosquito population instead of trying to protect your horse. Obviously, like, so my mare is allergic to bugs.
Oh, Addie.
Yeah, to bugs, of course. So she has to be like, she's got the booties, a full ear fly mask, the full neck sheet, like she's protected.
Do you remember that kid that used to come to like every pony club event or every school event, and they had just a Ziploc bag full of like their EpiPens, all their ibuprofen and like Benadryl, because the kid was allergic to grass and air and water and like everything in between.
Yes.
That's your pony.
That is my pony. My vet has actually recommended that I get her on like a allergy medicine, specifically in the summer for bugs, because she like breaks out in hives and then she like itches, so she's got big like bold patches from breaking out in hives. And then the best part,
So she looks good.
so she looks great. And she's got like a short mane, so there's no covering her neck and hiding it. And then, like, to top it all off, I have to keep allergy medicine on hand in case we find something else she's allergic to, because turns out she's allergic to certain types of bedding.
Yeah, that's true.
So
we found that one out.
We found that one out the hard way. So, like, I always have to have allergy medicine. There's something else. I can't remember what it is right now that she's also allergic to. So she's really fun. She's love her.
She's the ultimate thoroughbred that needs like her own little plastic bubble. And bubble wrap.
She like the thing. She doesn't hurt herself, even though as I'm saying that she's been lame for like 3 weeks. She's really careful with her body and her stuff, which I super appreciate. Like, she does not damage her things, so I can buy
That's
like
a nice change.
Oh, it's so nice. It's not that typical boy thoroughbred that has to break everything. It is definitely like she's much
When your
kinder.
blankets could only last like a month.
Yeah, she's so much like very respectful. She's had the same fly sheet for like 2 or 3 years now. Like, very respectful of her stuff.
Oh, poor pony. It's a tough life being, allergic to the entire world.
Yes, unfortunately. So it is almost July 4th. What are you planning for you and your ponies? Are you going to do anything to help your ponies through that day?
No, honestly, I'm not. I'm just going to leave them out in the pasture to do their own thing because, number one, I don't have a stall or a place to really bring them in that's a smaller enclosure if they would be spooking or running around. And on top of that, I feel like if I were just to lock them in a stall, they would just end up banging their faces up inside rather than, being able to be out and see what's potentially causing the noises. They also aren't bothered by the fireworks. Like, I know everyone else has the horses that get really freaked out and panicked by it, but mine could care less, man. They don't even notice what's happening.
Yeah, I saw a Facebook post this morning where someone was asking, like, what is everyone doing for their horses for the 4th of July? And there was a long list of people commenting, they're going to be locking them inside. They're going to be watching movies really loud, earplugs, and, Ace. Like, there was a lot that was going to be occurring. And I just, always am baffled by these posts every year because, one, my horses have never, even since we were little kids, like, our first barn we boarded at, I don't ever remember 4th of July being a topic. The second barn, I do remember there was a couple owners who would get really paranoid, but they'd get paranoid. They would, try to get the horses in early. They would put coverings over the stall. They would make it this really big deal, and I think the horses fed into that. But what most of those owners didn't see was that after they left, you and I were still around a lot of times. We would ride our horses.
We were riding.
Yeah, we would ride. We would go up to the top of one of the pastures that had a big hill to watch the fireworks. Never once thinking our horses were ever going to be upset. And you know what? I know no one broke down in the barn. Like, the horses were fine. Once their owners left them, once things were normal, they were fine.
Well, I think they feed off of everyone's nervous energy, and that all of a sudden you have this night where now there's like excessive noise and stuff, but on top of that excessive noise, you have horses that aren't normally in stalls overnight put in stalls. You have people listening movies abnormally loud next to them. You have all these things changing, and so I think it just, them and their horses are feeding off of one another's energy, and it's just like a vicious circle of idiocy.
Yeah, absolutely. Like, I so agree with that if you're going to spend like several days leading up to the 4th panicking, freaking out, making changes to your barn, changing your horse's routine, I'm not surprised your horse is bothered by July 4th. They just spent, the last 2 days or whatever panicking with you, and then suddenly there's these big booms and there's colors and then they're like, oh my God, Mom, you were so right. This day is terrifying. Like, why do people do this? So, like, I'm not surprised that people do have issues with their horses, that they do panic. I have never been in after we boarded our horses, we had several at home. Like, we always boarded and had horses at home. We used to blow up stuff in the front yard. Like, that's as close as you can get to the horses. Yeah, you know, obviously we're not blowing it up in the barn.
Really
but
care.
like, yeah, they never cared. And we never thought twice about, oh, maybe we shouldn't blow up fireworks in our front yard. Like, it just never bothered them. But we didn't do anything different. We left them and they got dinner.
Yeah.
We didn't have stalls. We had like stalls with shelters and paddocks. They were fine.
Well, and on top of that, like, I remember growing up, we had a state fair, and they have nightly, certain nights of the week, they have fireworks. And so when all the 4-H kids, we brought our horses in for the fair, on the nights there was fireworks, they would open up the arena so people could bring their horses into the arena to walk them around while the fireworks were occurring. But, like, you weren't allowed to be on your horse when it was happening. You had to just be on the ground. And then now you have multiple horses on, like, lunge lines when loud noises are exploding over, like, the head of the arena. And I always thought that was just the dumbest idea. Why pull your horse out of the stall to walk around with your nervous energy with a bunch of other nervous horses?
Well, and not to mention that going to the arena meant you were that much closer to the fireworks, because the arena was like the closest point to where they're blowing up fireworks.
But it was always such a big deal. Everyone always got so freaked out. They're like, oh my God, the fireworks are happening tonight. I got to pull my horse into the middle of the arena. And you're like, I don't know if that's safe. Maybe get away.
But I think part of it was, especially when we were at that age, like when you're in 4-H, you're around a lot of middle schoolers and high schoolers because that's the age of the organization. And I think at that age, a lot of young people, you like to be the center of attention. You like to be the one whose horse doesn't quite cooperate, whose horse isn't quite perfect. Like, that is a thing. People love to wear that badge on their back that, like, I don't have the perfect horse, yet I'm still here, you know, yet I'm still winning, yet, like, wearing that as some sort of, like, trophy. It's not a trophy. And I think fireworks was just part of that. Like, I get to wear this trophy. My horse doesn't like fireworks. I have to do something special.
Yeah, I agree with that. I mean, I was one of those kids, man. I was big into my horse is acting up. Look how good I am with, like, handling my horse acting up rather than look how good I am at relaxing my horse, you know? You have to deal with that whole different mentality. And I think when you're in middle school, man, do you feel cool when you got the horse that's bucky and you're just sticking it through.
Yeah.
It's definitely a mentality that occurs sometimes. And I unfortunately fell victim to that.
See, I was the complete opposite. I was I've only fallen off a Dublin twice. Like, I'm more excited about that because it's like, yes, he's had some pretty big moments and, like, been pretty big, but I would rather him, like, don't do that. Like, I want to work through this. I don't want you to act that way. And the fact that I've only fallen off of him twice is like, yes. So I think, like, that idea of wearing a trophy on, like, having this trophy of being the person with the misbehaving horse or the difficult horse or, you know, the not perfect horse is a good transition into our topic for today. Because I think that is probably one of the first things as a rider you need to get rid of if you want to make your horse competitive, if you want to improve your training and move through the levels and be just as good as your friend's $20,000 horse or $30,000 horse, right? Like, if you want to be competitive and you want to improve and you want to win, getting rid of that trophy is, like, a huge step. Like, you need to recognize that my horse maybe is not perfect. I don't disagree with you. Your horse isn't perfect. My horse is difficult. Like, that's true. But that doesn't matter. Like, you still need to learn the same things. You still need to spend the time on developing rhythm and relaxation and focusing on that training and not just, like, being flashy in those moments.
Well, I think one of the big things that we kind of want to focus on is that how to take the average horse and make them, you know, exceptional, or how to take the average horse and be competitive with them. And I know one of the things you mentioned in the last episode with who your inspiration is for, like, riders that you look up to, one of which being Vicky Wilson, who focuses on a full body approach. And so I think it's kind of along the line of, we all want this badge that we have the quirky horse, but we can handle it. But I think one of the biggest steps to taking your average horse and making them really competitive is that you have to look at it and say, they're not quirky. Your horse isn't just girthy. Something is going on. Something needs to be addressed. And it's like this full body approach that you take to your horse's wellness and treating them as though they are actual athletes, because they are athletes. And so I think that's a really big concept that needs to be brought down. Like, it's already there at the top levels. People are really focusing on the horses, giving them a full body approach, but I think it needs to be brought down even further and knowledge needs to be dispersed more.
I, like, absolutely agree with that. That is actually, like, when I took notes for this episode, the biggest takeaway or the biggest thing that I have really learned working with not perfect horses is that you really need to focus on the big picture and not the little issues. The big picture, for example, and I'll use Addie because she's my most recent example. She really struggles with her leg yield to the right. She has a hard time getting that right hind leg over and to cross. She also really struggles with her right canter lead and picking it up because the right hind leg has to load and take the weight so she can strike off. And so you see this pattern developing that her right hind leg, and you can look at it and see that the conformation of her right hind leg isn't the same as the left hind leg. And that if all I was to do was to focus on the leg yield, we would end up in fights every single day because it's hard for her. She doesn't have the muscles to do it the way I want her to do it. And if all I'm going to do is drill this leg yield, she'll give it to me. She'll give me what I am, in quote, what she thinks I want. But it's not going to be a quality leg yield. It's not going to be a lofty leg yield. It's not going to have cadence and relaxation. It's going to be her, trying to push her leg as far as she can. She gets crooked. She gets angry. And she often ends up fighting me, and she'll throw her head up and start trying to grab the reins and shake her head. And that's her saying, I can't do this. This hurts. So instead of focusing on trying to fix the leg yield, we just spend a lot of time trying to strengthen her hind end and strengthen her loin area because that's a really weak connection for her. And then, after we've spent, a couple months, usually we spend about a month and a half really trying to work the hind end. Then we'll come back. We'll try out the leg yield, see where we are, work on it in a very relaxed manner on a loose rein, a step or two, and then we'll go back to developing the strength because for a horse like her, we have to take it step by step. First, we get straightness. Then we get the step over. Then we can start to add that loft and that, in a dressage horse, you can picture their leg yield, right? How sort of just free and relaxed they are and how far their legs can cross and how that gait continues. You really have to break it down step by step and really focus on that bigger picture. And at the same time, while I've been spent, several weeks strengthening her hind end in order to get a better leg yield, well, her canter also improved at the same time because I was focusing not on the depart itself, but on that bigger issue.
Well, I think a lot of times people, they get it caught in their mind that, say, for instance, in your situation, you're struggling with a leg yield, especially going a certain direction. And so I think people will over drill that movement and overuse those muscles because they're so concerned with the fact that this is where I'm struggling. They just focus on kind of the end picture or the end movement that they need, but they don't really focus on the strength training that it takes to build up to that movement.
Yeah, I am not a big fan of drilling movements. If you're getting ready to go to a show and you're, a couple weeks out from that show, that's when you can start drilling movements and really trying to clean things up. But until that time, you should really be focusing on the overall the relaxation, the rhythm, the tempo, the overall gait quality, and your transitions. That should be the main focus. And then, you sprinkle in trying to work on movements to make sure, you don't want to get to a horse show, sign up for first level and find out, we can't leg yield. Right? That's not that's not what I'm suggesting. You definitely want to make sure you're at that level and can do those movements, but drilling them doesn't really come until you're much closer to the day of the show and you're really trying to look for perfection, not gait quality. At that point, if you don't have gait quality, then you're not ready for the show.
Well, and I think you've mentioned this previously, is that think of when you go to a clinic, you always come back and you say, people ask you, what did you guys work on? What did you focus on? And no one ever says, oh, I learned how to do this great new cool movement. We focused on the basics. And I think that says a lot for how we should go about our schooling and working with our horses and teaching them things, is that we shouldn't always be schooling and drilling these harder movements or these upper level movements. Is you really have to work on your basic school figures and just building the strength. That's the biggest thing, is you have to build the strength in your horses.
Yeah, honestly, the mark of a good clinic is when you walk away and you're like, we worked on the basics. I honestly think that is the sign that clinic was really good and really beneficial. Because if you're going to, whether it's a lesson or a clinic, and they're like, well, we've got this fun new trick, your horse will be leg yielding in just 5 minutes, or, try this gadget, then you've missed the point.
Yeah.
For those of you who ride dressage, you're probably very familiar with the training pyramid, but that training pyramid was designed for a reason. Like it works. It works. And those are the basics. And that's what we need to focus on. And having quality gaits, one of the things for your horse is that a quality gait, what is a quality gait? And what is a quality gait for your horse? And really understanding that my thoroughbred, my appendix are never going to move like a warm blood. We can get close. We can do a lot of cavaletti and really try to develop that loft, but really making sure that your idea of what a quality gait is accurate for your horse and your horse's conformation, and not getting frustrated that my horse does not have the collected trot of a warm blood. He's a long thoroughbred. He's never going to have the same type of collected trot. He's not a flashy horse like that. Doesn't mean we can't be correct. Doesn't mean we can't have a nice trot, a nice collected trot. I just have to be really realistic with what my expectations are and really figure out where we can excel in other places.
It's always very frustrating when you look at these other horses and they have these big elastic strides. They have all this, what's the word? Not elevation. Freak, what's the word?
I don't know.
The suspension. There we go.
Okay.
Suspension. I was like, it's not levitating. I know I don't want the horse to levitate, but
maybe that's a new dressage move.
I think that's called the lavade, hun.
Oh, that's right. They've already invented that. Airs above ground. I forgot about those.
Yeah, no, we got all that stuff already. But I always get frustrated when I think about when I was watching like people riding their dressage test growing up, is I would see their ponies and they would have these really nice gaits and they would have a lot of suspension. And then I would get on my pony and we had these short little choppy strides, but I had to really come to terms with what his stride was in comparison to the others and work on developing his own stride and making that better and not trying to take that and make it a warm blood stride. I don't know if that makes sense at all, because we did have a short choppy stride. Even when he was super relaxed and really using his top line and coming over his back, we still had a relatively short choppy stride versus these other horses, how they looked when they were relaxed or even when they were tense. But the marks in our dressage test really reflected when he was using his full ability and his full stride and was showing his relaxation versus when he was tense. And so, I saw a huge change in our scores. You just have to address what your horse is, how your horse moves, and then strengthen them to their ability. You can't always be basing it off of all the other horses out there that you're seeing.
Yeah, I think that knowing your horse is something that is so important, is really understanding their strengths and their weaknesses and how you can play to those. Things like in a dressage test, knowing that, okay, my horse is a little bit tighter or my horse is a little bit long. We're never going to have that quality of gait. We can't be flashy. We can have we can get a 6 on our, a 6 or a 7 on our gaits. They're just not going to be 8s or 9s. Okay, so I'm going to be super accurate, because that's the one place where accuracy, especially in a dressage test, and this goes for jumping, right? This goes for a jumping test. This goes for performance patterns. If you can be accurate, that will get you like those additional points. That's where you can make up for, I don't have a lofty gait, but I can be really accurate. I can get deep in my corners. I can get right on C, right on center line, get my halt at X. I can make sure that my flying lead change is on the exact mark in the pattern, or that we're getting our strides. Like, you can focus on the accuracy a lot more than you can improve the quality of gait.
Well, and accuracy is one of those basic concepts that people really forget about and just kind of leave in the dust when they're trying to work on extending the trot or trying to create a medium trot, collected trot. When they're trying to do all that stuff, is people really forget about accuracy. And that's where you can really come through with your scores and get those extra points. Whereas if the gait that your horse is presenting might be a 6, but when you present it with your accuracy and you ride it exactly how the test states, that's when you can take it to a 7 or an 8. And if you are continuously doing that throughout your test, is it shows in the end result. Whereas some people, when I've ridden fancier horses in my test, I've had movements that were an 8 and then the next movement was a 3. So like that accuracy, if you carry it through, it really does make a difference in your scores.
Yeah. I mean, if you're a dressage rider, I think we can all raise our hands because we've all had the comment geometry written on a test or two, right? Like, it's written for a reason. It matters. Eventing, for those of you who are familiar with the sport, it has gone through several changes over the last several decades. But one of the early versions of eventing, back in I want to say 80s and 90s. I wasn't competing much at that age because I'm was, maybe not alive, but
I wasn't born yet.
and if I was born, I was not eventing. But you could, that sport was designed for thoroughbreds, and those of us who own thoroughbreds know that dressage is not their thing. They are galloping horses. Cross country is their thing, right? That's where they race.
Well, roads and track, big fan.
Right, exactly. And they can make it around a show jumping course, but depending on your thoroughbred, that's easier said than done. Because the show jumping was our worst phase. You won a dressage test because you went in and you were workmanlike. You didn't have a lot of the warm blood gait qualities. And so that has definitely changed over the years, right? We're all aware of how dressage tests have changed over the last several years. But the main focus originally was you could go in and you could win with an just being accurate. You could be above the bit. You could be hollow in places. But if you were accurate, that was what it took to be a winning test. And I don't think accuracy has become any less important. We have different horses and different breeds competing now, but accuracy is still just as important.
We also have different style courses and tests where, like, previously, you had these very big and complicated cross-country courses. And I think over the years is they've just forgotten about accuracy, and it's no less important than it was previously. I mean, think about the combinations that you're going into when you have like an angled line or something.
I mean, that's it. Accuracy has shifted to now being in the cross-country field and not being in the dressage arena.
It has. And it's also shifting a little bit with like show jump courses. I love watching how the course designer builds the jump courses at like Rolex and Burley and even, at the or local shows and stuff, because I think it's really interesting that because they all set up the course where you have a big oxer and then immediately after this oxer you have a tight turn to like a tight double or a triple, and they set it up just so that you have to ride your horse accurately. You have to have this communication to be able to easily bring them back, set them up and change, how they're moving their body after covering a big oxer to come back and do a tight double. And so it's, you have to ride accurately in these things. You can't just cut your turns. You can't just run into these jumps. No matter what level you're going, whether you're doing beginner, novice, or training level, or you're going up the levels and stuff, is that accuracy will always be something that helps you keep your scores good and will honestly help you overall with your riding.
And I think there's another word that goes with accuracy, and that's sharpness. That, accuracy is getting your figures right, getting your geometry, getting if the movement happens at X, whatever letter, A or C, that you're actually truly doing it at those letters. But there's also sharpness, and that's the quality of that your horse moves off. If that was a walk to trot transition, was your horse sharp? Was he clean in that movement? Did he truly move off of your leg? That's another place where you can really make up points, even though you don't have that flashy gait. All horses can trot when you ask them, and they can all trot off with power. That's something any horse can do.
Okay, so I'm noticing a theme with all the points that we're bringing up is that the way you make the average horse very competitive and stuff is not by focusing on what they don't have and what they weren't born with. It's by focusing on the things that you can control. You can control accuracy. You can control how sharp they are in their transitions, that they actually move off your leg when you ask. You can control all that. You can't necessarily control the stride that they're born with, but you can build their strength. You can control, how much relaxation you're showing. I remember watching instructors go into the dressage ring, and they were very conscientious of their horse that they didn't necessarily have the best extended trot. And the horse that went before them had a beautiful one. And so what they would do is they would compress their normal trot just a little bit more. That way when they went to do their extended trots, is they could really show a change and a difference. So it wasn't necessarily that the horse had this exceptional movement. It was that they knew what they had, they knew what they could control, and so they made the effort to show that they were able to achieve these things.
Yes, that was a strategy I definitely used in my dressage test, is that my horse's lengthening was... It was decent, but it wasn't a warm blood lengthening. So we would always, oftentimes before you did your lengthening, you would come around the short end first, or you'd have a circle or a turn. And so we would use that circle or turn to really kind of package him up, make him look that much tighter, kind of go a little bit towards, a shortened stride or our collection. And then we could really open him up to his max, which horses could go way beyond his max. But it
showed the change.
But it showed the change. And so that is another thing to when you're really thinking, and I don't think your goal should be to have a strategy to ride through your test or have a trick to make your scores better, but it should be knowing where your horse excels and where they don't excel. And the same thing goes for, show jumping and riding through those courses. That going through the triple combinations, not your horse's strong suit. So you know coming into that, okay, we really have to be packaged. I really have to have my leg on. Like you have to know your horse and really understand where they excel and where they don't excel. For you, your horse, yours was a pony. And when you ride a pony going, competing, I think you were doing like 4-foot jumpers, 3.6 to 4 foot. You would think the best strategy would be to package him up, get him to the base and let him jump. That's not how you rode though. You let your horse take off.
And long. It wasn't how he preferred to jump. So he really liked his long distances, and we found that if you try to package him up and ride him into the base, he just didn't feel comfortable jumping from that spot. He had the ability to take off longer and he would clear it and he would be just fine. And so I struggle with a lot of instructors trying to convince them that, like, yes, it's ideal that we were to ride with a bouncier stride, more power, coming into right to the base of the jump and then taking off. But that's not how he wants to jump, and that's not how he feels comfortable. And so you had to play to his strength. And his strength was he would take off long. He'd make it look like a massive jump, and man, did he nail it.
Mm-hmm. I mean, this is no excuse to let your horse run crazy through a course, but that's what worked for you. Like, I used to show that pony in hunters, and man, did I had a judge once, like, pull me aside at the end of the day, and she's like, I want you to know you came in, every time you entered the class, you came in first. But by the time you left, you were not first. And it was because he wasn't a hunter. He was a show jumping pony that needed to go fast. He needed speed, and he needed to be able to take off long, which is not ideal for an eq class. It's just not.
No,
we did hunters much better on my thoroughbred, but understanding your horse's needs. And this is like a little tiny pet peeve I have, and I've seen it happen over the years. But I understand that you can't always afford the horse that you want. I mean, that's why we have this podcast. That's why we're sharing our experience with you. But if the horse you have does not fit into the discipline you want to do, stop trying to make him fit. If you've got a pony that gallops around a course and takes off long, hunters is not your thing. Stop trying. Find a sport where he fits better, or find a horse that fits better. And I'm not, I turned around, that was an $1,800 pony that I outgrew. My sister did great in show jumpers, and I got a $200 thoroughbred, and we did much better competing in hunters. So you don't have to turn around and buy an expensive horse. You just need to make sure that the horse you have fits. And I remember being in 4-H and going to performance shows after and feeling so bad watching a lot of the girls were trying to compete performance on horses that would have been much better as gamers or much better as, sport ponies, and felt so bad for them because every time they would leave the arena in last place or be dismissed without a ribbon. And it wasn't because they were bad riders or had bad horses. It was because they were in the wrong discipline and nobody was helping them find where they should be or find them a horse that was better suited. So this all goes to knowing your horse and putting them in a place where they're going to excel.
Honestly, when you find the place that your horse excels, you have so much more fun with it, and that you're no longer leaving the arena in tears because he came in last place once again.
Mm-hmm.
When both the rider and the horse are enjoying it and are having fun, it presents so much better of a picture, and judges can tell, people on the side watching, they can tell when both the horse and the rider are enjoying it, and that's so crucial.
It takes a lot of pressure off too, because you no longer have to try to beat, a square peg into a round hole. You no longer have to work as hard, or, and I'm not saying don't work hard, but when you're trying to make a hot pony compete in performance classes or in hunters, you are trying so hard just to slow the horse down. But if you just move to jumpers, you no longer have to slow the thing down. You can actually use that speed to your advantage.
What Kelsey's saying is it's not, like she said earlier, it's not an excuse to let your horse rush every single jump and be out of control. That's not what we're saying. What we're saying is that you know what your horse's natural movement is. You know how they prefer to do and where they're comfortable at. And so you work to their strengths. You work to work with them and not against them.
Absolutely. Yeah. Do you have any final thoughts for this topic?
I have one more thing that I've thought of.
Yeah, go for it.
It's kind of along the lines of what we've been talking about this whole time with the basics, and that it's not these complicated movements. What I found really works with horses overall, it doesn't really matter what the horse is, how talented they are. What I have found is that when you have an issue, when you're having a problem, the fix probably isn't complicated. you always have your trainer shouting, more leg, outside rein, inside leg to outside rein. And you hear these fixes over and over again for a reason. Is your fix isn't going to be something new and crazy. It's not going to be some fancy bit or like this new gadget. The fix is so much more simple than what people think it is. And I think we just get in our heads and we try to make things more complicated, or we're trying to solve so many things at once that you just need to slow it down, focus on one thing, and think of an easy, straightforward fix, because that's what's going to be the most understandable to your horse anyways.
I actually have a really good strategy I use for when that situation happens, because I have dealt, unfortunately, with horses that throw fits and horses that don't throw fits. The best thing to do is when you find you and your horse getting to a point where you're both getting heated is stop everything. Drop the reins, long reins, let your horse just walk for a second. If your horse... There's going to be days where, A, your horse isn't in it. They don't want to do it. A fight is not progress. A fight is not progress. Getting to the end of that fight and having your horse calm down, you didn't win. You just made the problem worse and making that experience for your horse worse. They're going to remember that last time you asked for that leg yield or last time you asked for this thing, there was a fight. And they're going to go to that fight quicker because that's when, after the fight, you were done. That's where the release was. So if you find you and your horse are getting heated, maybe the tail's starting to swish, maybe they're throwing their head, stop everything, drop the reins, let your horse walk for several steps, and then pick up one aid. You only get to ask the question with one aid. Is it your hands? Is it your legs? Is it your seat? Because often what's happening in that lead up moment is your horse doesn't understand and your aids are getting sloppy and they're conflicting with one another. I know I keep using leg yield as an example today, but leg yield I think is really a good place where you see a lot of this, is that there's a lot of aids that are going on during a leg yield to keep your horse straight, to get that leg to go over. You're putting leg pressure on, but your horse doesn't want to go faster. But then as he goes faster, he starts to bend, and before you know it, you're in a C shape, maybe going towards the wall. And so with that, if my horse starts to get cranky in the leg yield, long rein, and then I just use my seat. And then I'll come back a little bit later and just use my leg. And then maybe just my hands and try to break those aids down so she can understand them as individuals before I try the whole picture again.
Well, and it's easy when you're working on these movements, and it's easy when your horse is starting to get heated, you're starting to get emotionally involved in the situation, to start, you don't really notice it's happening, but your aids start conflicting with one another. What's the term? I can't think of the term.
Clashing?
There we go. My goodness. I'm not doing great today. When you start clashing the aids, is sometimes it's very minute, but if your horse is sensitive, it's just magnified and you don't really notice that you're clashing your aids, but you are. And so with the method of just coming back down and using one aid, you kind of eliminate that clashing.
And it's also a great opportunity for you, because when you start to clash those aids, you often find that you've moved in the saddle and you're not sitting square anymore, or your leg has gotten so far back. Why is it that far back? Or your reins are crooked. And if you just stop.
Or your hands are in your crotch.
Exactly. And you don't even know. You think you're sitting perfectly straight because you're so focused on the movement and getting the aids. You can't see or feel the bigger picture and how crooked and off center you are. So it's great. Go back. Drop the reins, readjust, make sure you're relaxed, and then choose the one aid that you think your horse should work on for that moment, whether it's the hands or the legs or whatever, and just make sure that you're doing that one absolutely correct, that you're sitting absolutely square.
Yeah, and then you're not yelling at them with your aids anymore either. Is that, when everyone starts getting worked up, is you end up applying your aids louder and louder and louder until eventually you're just shouting at your horse, and the horse is like, I don't understand. Yeah. And so when you just bring it back down, go on that long and loose rein, when you end up reapplying the one aid, or you end up re-asking the question, is you ask it a lot quieter and a lot softer, and it's a lot easier for your horse to understand.
Yeah, absolutely.
Absolutely, folks.
So,
sorry, had to get that out there. All right, are we?
I think
we're wrapping up, aren't we?
I think that might be the episode.
All right, guys. Thanks for tuning in with us. This is actually a fun one. I really like this one.
Yeah, no, I think we had a good conversation. I hope you guys enjoyed it. And we want to remind you to stay safe, stay classy, and stay in the saddle.
Have a great day, guys.